Hello, and welcome to Enough, where we discuss issues that are affecting our real lives in our communities. I'm Maya, and my co host is Angela. We're going to talk about all kinds of issues, ordinary issues, political issues, you name it. And we're just two moms trying to have intelligent conversations. I said trying. I mean, we are two moms having intelligent conversations.
Usually.
Yeah. So, did you see the cover of Vogue this month? Is it this month or this week? I don't follow it.
Oh my God, yes. Amanda Gorman is
Yeah,
on
she was
it.
amazing. She was gorgeous.
She's
I love that woman, young lady. She's not
yes.
young enough to be my kid, but yeah, I adore her.
Yeah, she's amazing. I mean, so for all those who don't know who Amanda Gordon is, you probably just crawled out from under a rock somewhere. But of course, she is the the poet laureate of this country. She was the one that delivered the inauguration poem. What was your, I mean, I'm sure you saw that poem, Maya. Did you have a favorite quote from it?
Yeah, I loved I think it was something like history has its eyes on us, and this is an era of just redemption. And that seems
Mm,
pretty much where we are right now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Everything about that is deep, isn't it?
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You have a favorite quote from that poem?
I think it was the end of it. I think the way she ended it, where she says, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Oh yeah, I like
It's
that
like
one too.
sent chills. Yeah. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. I mean, I have on my mind Georgia. Have you been following Georgia? What's going on in Georgia, Maya?
I have. It's kind of stressful.
It
Um,
is. It is.
I'm worried.
Yeah. I mean, Georgia, yeah, I have family in Georgia, so I love Georgia. I mean, I go there often and I adore the people there. And especially my family and all the people I know who live there. You think of all that they've been through in 2020, 2021. I mean, they've gone through the Ahmaud Arbery vigilante case where Black man was hunted down by vigilantes and shot and killed. They had uh, the case not too long after that with Rayshard Brooks, who was another Black man shot to death by police officers in a parking lot. Um, and then, of course, you have all that drama with the former president calling state officials all out their names and telling them what to do with the election. I mean, with no shame. I mean, and then like just, last month, that tragic massacre of the uh, mostly Asian people who were working in the massage parlor, and there were some patrons who were shot and killed.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
And
and
listening to the sheriff talk about the gunman had a bad day. Like, oh, and if it matters, two people were white that were killed. Like hearing him say that multiple times, that's kind of painful.
yeah, it was a lot of pain. I mean, and then to see Park Cannon, who is a legislator, be arrested for protesting the governor's signing of SB 202.
Protesting, well, she was knocking on a door that
True.
she has access to be at, and she should be allowed to knock on that door. So yeah,
In the building where she works, the
mm-hmm.
state capitol.
Yeah.
Unlike the people who stormed the Capitol, but we won't even talk about that.
I mean, we
Nobody
could
got
talk
arrested.
about that for 30 seconds. Right? Because when you are Black and unarmed, you can't knock on the governor's door, even though it's kind of like a coworker because you work there. But yet, when
Slightly.
have zero melanin, you can storm the Capitol with guns and whatnot and do what you do.
And go home. Nobody arrests you.
Be shocked when they come to your door
Yeah,
and
exactly.
demand organic food in jail.
It's amazing.
Let me tell you something. I was a corrections officer. You don't get to demand organic food in jail. Well, I guess he did. That dude, his mom, I think, was a judge. So maybe he felt like, he felt like he was at home or something. I don't even know. But it's like you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit.
Right? And his mom was a judge. I didn't know that.
I believe his mother is a judge. Yeah. So
Privilege. It's all privilege. That's
yeah,
what it is.
it is. You're right. You're right.
We don't have that privilege. And certainly SB 202, something that's it's going to have ongoing rippling negative effects for people of color, Black people, poor people. I don't know. What do you know about it?
So I know that there's a bunch of articles out there, and some of the issues that people are bringing up are like the voter ID requirements and how that's hard for people. But then there are other people who are like, who doesn't have a license? Like everyone has a license, everyone has an ID. And people just, there's a disconnect. They don't get that there are a ton of people who do not have state IDs. I read in one article, um, 25% of African Americans in any given state don't have IDs. So if you were
Well,
born in a certain time, like our grandparents, some of them were born not in hospitals. You were born in the house or somewhere. um, you don't have a birth certificate. How do you, sometimes you can't get that license without a birth certificate. Sometimes you need an ID to get an ID. So it's not super simple for everybody, which I think it, like in our heads, it makes sense. Like it's super easy for me to get an ID. I was born in a hospital and I was born in the North. I was born in New York. So like, things were easier for me. But 20 years before I was born, or even 15 years, I had a lady I was listening to on NPR radio. They were speaking about how they didn't they weren't really careful about the spelling of names and things of that
mhm,
nature. So
mhm.
when you go to get your ID, they won't do it because it's different than what your social security name is, or than what maybe your marriage certificate or whatever. So they don't give you your state issued ID. And I really didn't realize how, when you're incredibly poor, and I don't think that we all get that either. I don't think people get how poor people really are, that getting to the DMV is not easy when there is no public transportation and you have no car and you live in a
Well,
rural.
yeah. And you live in a rural area. And I mean, um, I can attest to standing in a very long line in the cold in New Jersey with my mother at a DMV because they had closed down DMVs and um, they had consolidated them all into one location. So we had to drive way away from where we would normally go, and we stood in a very long line. So just imagine that you're asking elderly people, you're asking people who don't have a reason to be there except to get this ID to vote because they're not driving
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
do that. That's imposing imposing um, a level of burden that that discourages people, and that happens definitely happens. So that's not even a rural. That's the north, and that's not a rural area. But there are a lot of people who don't drive,
absolutely. There,
and
especially, yeah. No, I mean, I've got two grown sons who are men who just don't drive. They
right.
they decide they're going to live in the city. They don't, necessarily need to worry about it right now. But I know another one of the things that makes it harder for people in Georgia is, so if your polling place changes, it's and you can go there. I believe in the past you were able to maybe like do a provisional ballot, but now can't do that. And there's not always good information explaining to you that your polling place has changed. Another thing that they did in Georgia that makes it harder for people is the date that you can request a ballot to be sent to you has changed. The date that you can fill out an application to vote has been moved, you know, further away, so that way you can't think maybe I am going to vote. Okay, well, voting is next week, and then you can't do that. There's a lot of little things they're putting in place that are making it harder for people to vote. And I don't know. It's all predicated, as the articles are saying, off of a lie. One of the worst things in the bill is that it changes who can control the voting. In the past, it was the Secretary of State. That person was the chairman of the State Board of Elections. They've taken the power away from the Secretary of State, who did a good job standing up to Trump, right? So now that person has just, his power is gone. And the elected officials who are in charge, who right now happen to be Republicans in Georgia, and probably after the gerrymandering they're going to do is going to stay Republicans. But now they're in charge of the State Board of Elections. And the new rules lets the State Board of Elections go into the different localities and change what they want to do. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they've basically, they've taken it from the way it was to now the people who wrote the bill can enforce the bill.
Yes. And you know what? Whenever you have that kind of consolidation of power, you open up all the avenues for corruption.
Absolutely.
Which has happened in the past. We know.
Like they can't even send absentee ballots to residents in Georgia. Just a blanket, you're registered, here's a ballot. That can't happen anymore. And it's strange how they even stopped third-party organizations who just care about Americans voting. So sometimes they will just give money to a county who doesn't have a lot of resources, so that way they can make sure that they can have extra polling places or like have the staff. Do you get what I'm saying? And now you can't have third-party organizations who care give money. Like that's not allowed to either. So I don't know. It just makes no sense making it harder.
Yeah. We have a question. Is there continued voter mobilization in Georgia so folks vote during midterms and get some of those clowns out of there? Absolutely. I think that's the response, right? From a fair fight and Stacey Abrams, that what we need to do in response to this is to really turn up all action to try to get more people to vote in spite of voter suppression, which has been the case. I mean, that's why Georgia came out so strong, because there was suppression there, and we've been. So here's the problem I have with that. I mean, you talked about it being predicated on a lie, that there was some type of fraud, right? The reality is that there were long lines, right? There was this the requirement to have a photo ID. And that was already being contested as a form of, those things are already being contested as forms of suppression. So instead of addressing those things, it seems to me that a lot of the components of this bill are actually putting into place more ways in which lines are going to get longer because fewer people can actually access the absentee ballot, right? It doesn't address any kind of limits to voting times and voting availability, right? So,
well, there's one thing. It does say that the line shouldn't be over an hour long. It does say that in the bill.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah, you can't have people waiting in line for over an hour. But then what do you do then? I didn't see anything where they gave extra assistance or funds or anything to mitigate that. It was just like, don't let people wait for over an hour.
That means you turn people away.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? Like, okay, so if I tell you can't, that means that when I get to this spot, right, no one can stand beyond this spot. That's not making voting accessible.
So then that's the Jim Crow 2.0. Because long lines typically occur in non-white jurisdictions.
Absolutely. And
Um,
it was intentional.
yeah,
Um, the closing of voting, uh, election and voting stations, and the availability of polls in non-white areas is well documented.
I was reading someone's blog, or maybe it was their Facebook post. It was a elected official, not a state official, but a smaller, like, local elected official in Georgia, and they were talking about how the bill isn't as bad as it was supposed to be because there was the pushback that came before they voted on it, and everyone was already looking at it, and it was, national news before it got voted on. And so they took some of the really, really crazy things out. But, like, for instance, the souls to the polls, that was supposed to be taken out, but they actually codified it because it was never written in to any voting laws, and they actually made it that it can happen. But then they also made it optional. So I don't understand what that optional means. Does that mean that the state, or excuse me, the local um, board of elections there needs to, like, say, hey, we'll have Sunday voting this time? Or so I don't know, like, because like I said, it was never written in, and now
Hmm.
it's written in, but it's optional. So, um,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't. It's very confusing. I would suggest people do their research. It's hard to have a discussion about the bill when you haven't read the bill. You shouldn't have
Hmm.
a discussion on social media about it when you haven't read it, because you're just going to listen to what other people are saying. But other people probably didn't read it either. They're just going to listen to someone else. So I would say, maybe Angela, you can put the link to that article that you shared with me.
Or
When,
yeah.
like, after we're done, maybe you can put that in the comments so that people um, can look for it, or just, do what I do and go read the bill.
You know what? I think that's great advice, and that's always my thing. Is I always go to primary source documentation, go straight to the bill. But the reality is this, though: you you hold your elected officials accountable for they are there because they are supposed to be able to conduct the business of the government, and they're supposed to be able to write bills and vote on them in your best interest, right? So it's okay to not understand the legal language in a bill as
Hmm.
a regular person. What you have to do is you have to hold your elected official accountable for representing you.
I absolutely
If
agree.
if you should be able to, if they voted on that, you should be able to ask them the questions, and they should be able to answer them. They should have town halls. This kind of something of this importance should have not been voted on without communication to the constituents. And so I would say, if you're in Georgia and anywhere else, because you know what, this is not just Georgia.
Yes, this is
It's
going to be
Arizona,
rolling out
it's
to other
Texas,
states.
it's New Hampshire. You
Hmm.
know, it's all over. So if your elected officials are voting on bills that have an impact on your ability to vote, then and they are not conducting question and answer sessions, town halls, you have to ask what they have to hide.
Absolutely. And I would say, I just saw someone put this on social media today, and it really made sense. It said something like, when you're not used to being questioned, accountability feels like persecution. And that just resonated with me because I listen to what Mitch McConnell says. I read what the Republican lawmakers in my county and in my state put on their Facebook and their social media, and they are incredibly fragile, and they feel like they are being persecuted. And these are
Yes.
grown, old, behind men. Like, you know, it does feel like persecution because people are asking those questions, and they can't handle it. And, back to what Gary asked about
Mhm.
continuing voter mobilization, you did mention Fair Fight. I think people
Mhm.
should absolutely tune into Fair Fight, join it, get on the mailing list, read their emails to find out what's going on there. It actually educates you um, on the
Absolutely.
entire process. It's really easy for us regular folk to understand. But there's also, if you happen to have family in Georgia or you're in Georgia and you see this, there's Stand Up Georgia, Black Voters Matter. There's a bunch of organizations that are about getting out the vote in Georgia. You just got to find them. Contact your local NAACP. I would literally just look in any area in Georgia and look for the Black person elected and ask them. Tuned into it. I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah, well, you know what? Because they want them to lose their job. That's what this whole thing is about, anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but you know what? Too, I just want to say this too. You have to be careful about even reading the bills, because the bills are themselves written full of propaganda. So if you read that bill, it reads that. I actually wrote it down. So here's what they said. So the changes made in this legislation in 2021 are designed to address the lack of elector confidence in the election system on all sides of the political spectrum, to reduce the burden on election officials, and to streamline the process of conducting elections in Georgia by promoting uniformity in voting. That sounds beautiful. Sounds like what we all want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to read the finer print. So understand too that it's written, it's all rainbows and butterflies and how it's written, and the devil is in the details, which is why you have to ask your elected officials, the deeper, the harder questions.
Absolutely. And I saw that a Republican lawmaker in Virginia said Virginia's next in response to Georgia's voting bill. So again, no matter what state you are in, you should pay attention and you should care, because they are coming for your votes.
Yeah, there are so many states, and also, if you're not in a state that's directly impacted right now, of course, be on the lookout and make sure it's not coming your way. But there's something you can do. And we talked about it in our first show, right? We talked about those voting rights acts that are in Congress, right? So we have the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that we want prioritized so that they can come up for a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. And then we already have HR 1 for the People Act, which was passed by the House of Representatives. So we want to make sure, what we want to do is we want to make sure on a federal level that we have the security in place to impose standards that impose a level of equality and voter confidence, that everyone has the right to vote, that expands the right to vote and doesn't constrain it and suppress people's rights. So make sure anybody can do that and everyone can do that. So contact your senator regarding HR 1 for the People Act, and also contact the House of Representatives. We want to prioritize the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. You should know who your senators are. You should know who your representatives are. And if you don't, you can go to
Fair Fight will give it.
Yes, Fair Fight will give it to you. Also, there's an app you can get on your mobile device called the 5 Calls app, and you type it in, you put in your zip code, and then your stuff is already there. Like, it tells you who your elected officials are, and you can just click on it in the app and it calls them for you as well. I use it about once a week. So
I do too. I email.
I like to call because I like to fuss because they don't answer.
I do call. They don't. Yeah, I call and I talk to the nice ladies on the, or usually they're women who answer, the interns who answer the phones. They're always so nice and pleasant. But
they don't listen, because I say every time, do not call me back if you're an intern or a staffer. I only want my elected official to return my call, and they call me back every time.
So has the elected official ever called you back? I don't even think I expected that.
Just the intern. And I said, listen, I don't want to be mean to you, but I'm going to hang up because I want to talk to him.
You know what? When we get big, when this show blows up, they're going to call us back.
I don't know. I think at this point, they've just blocked my number. They're like, oh, let that go straight to voicemail. It's her.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I mean, I think the other thing I wanted to bring out is that you can support, there are charities, because part of this bill too is trying to get out of some of the efforts that we have through private, nonprofits to help get engaged voters. They're trying to really minimize their effect.
Yeah,
But we won't let that happen. And, you can always support those charities that are local to you, or those that in Georgia that are actually on the ground getting people, registered to vote. Okay. They need money, they need resources in order to do that hard work. So there's something that we can all do, whether we're in Georgia or not.
absolutely. And we're almost done here. We've got like just a few minutes left. I just want to say, what did you think about the corporations that came out and said, like voting is important and shame on Georgia?
Good for them. I'm glad they did that. And you know what? We should put the pressure on them to continue to do that, because,
Absolutely.
we vote with our dollars. And so we're letting them know, putting them on notice that if I have to boycott you, I will.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. I mean, I am glad that Delta did what Delta did and Coca-Cola and all the other companies, but keep doing it, right? That's what we can sit on our phones and email them and say, keep
Yes.
doing it.
And Major League Baseball. Good call.
Yeah, absolutely good call. Even though I know, some people are upset, but you should be more mad at the voting
Voter
restrictions
suppression.
than
Exactly.
you should be that you can't watch a game.
I don't trust anybody who's more angry with the MLB than they are the bill.
Yeah. And so, wrapping up before we go, we can't
Mhm.
forget another major event this week. This season's year's NCAA March Madness happened because I'm pretty sure it got canceled last year, correct? Right? Because of COVID,
Yes. Yeah,
right?
it did. It did.
Yeah. I'm not like really a sports person. I just know a little bit. But I just felt like the basketball championship game was played after a long season and they dealt with like
Yes.
subpar conditions
Oh my
and COVID
gosh.
restrictions.
Yes. Congratulations to Stanford.
Yes. Go
I didn't go to
ladies.
Stanford, but yay, Stanford beat Arizona 54-53. It was like a nail biter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And yeah, they dealt with a lot, because they were not treated on the same, they were given subpar um training facilities, food, and everything as compared to the men's teams. But
Mm-hmm.
they showed themselves to be the champions that they were, both Arizona and actually all of the women who participated in that championship.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
so I'm really proud.
they all get disrespected. So
Exactly. So I just want the president, Mark Emer, to know, the president of the NCAA, putting him on notice that he
mm-hmm.
needs to do better.
Yeah,
All
stop
right.
being so fragile. Give the ladies what they deserve.
I know. I know. And you know what? Okay, so I've been getting notes. Somebody said we also have to say rest in peace to DMX.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, because it is time for us to close out, I know
Okay.
we only have like 28, 29 minutes. Thank you for watching enough. And, rest in peace, DMX.
To DMX. Earl Simmons. Earl Simmons. I think.
Earl Simmons. Okay, Earl. Hope you make it to heaven. And listen, guys, thank you for being here. And we will see you in 2 Fridays.